Hi friends! Happy Saturday! Fancy seeing you here. And for those of you who have never seen my face before, I am Olivia and you can consider me your fragrance fairy godmother. So for the topic of today's video, we are going to be talking about a fragrance note that I think a lot of people are a little bit intimidated by, and that would be the note of oud. Now, speaking from personal experience, I have to be honest that when I started my fragrance journey, A, I had no clue what oud was, and B, the minute I smelled it, I did not know if it was going to be for me. So I think it's important that I first explain what oud is for those of you who might not know. It is a fragrance note that is incredibly expensive and very, very rare that's used in a lot of Middle Eastern fragrances. Essentially, it is a sap that is produced by the agarwood tree when infected with a certain type of fungus, but what's interesting about it, at least to me, not every tree that's infected with this fungus will produce this oud, making it very rare. And depending on what kind of agarwood tree it comes from, it can smell very different. Sometimes it can come off very warm and ambery smelling. Sometimes it can smell richly woody. Sometimes it can smell a little bit dirty and earthy. Sometimes a little bit animalic and leathery. But the reason that it turned me off in the beginning is because there's some ouds, that smell a little bit like poop. So today we're going to talk about every oud fragrance that I have in my collection thus far, beginning with fragrances that I think are going to be good introductory oud fragrances for those of you who are newer to the scent note, that are going to be very easy and very likable. And as we go along, we will graduate into more intense oud fragrances. So if that sounds like something interesting to you, keep on watching. Starting off with the House of Kayali, they just came out with an oud collection called Oudgasm. I think vanilla oud is going to be very, very easy and very likable for a lot of you because primarily this is a sweet vanilla fragrance that is warm and comforting and cozy with some notes of musk. So it smells clean, sweet, but not tooth achingly sweet, because I've heard that a lot of people say that this is like super duper sugary sweet. I don't think it's that intensely sweet. It's nicely balanced with that muskiness. The oud in this just comes off almost like sandalwood. It's almost a creamy, woody facet. So we have notes of oak moss, a little bit of oud, some saffron that gives it a nice elevated touch. If you are looking for really good introductory oud fragrance, I think this is the perfect place to start because it's primarily a sweet, warm, comforting fragrance with some soft, woody nuances in the background. Next is another one from the Oudgasm collection, but this takes it in a little bit different of a direction. So this is Rose Oud, and this is going to be for those of you who like a very natural smelling floral fragrance. Particularly we have rose, peony, and geranium. So this is going to feel fresh and green. The oud in this comes off a little bit spicy. This smells very natural and is certainly going to be for a floral lover, a rose in particular. And I say that with such emphasis because of how many people tell me that rose smells like grandma to them. Which, I'm sorry, your grandma smelled amazing because I am and will forever be a rose girl. If you're more into a fresh, fruity, feminine sort of fragrance, this is a brand new one from the House of Swiss Arabian, and this is called Oud Amar. This is a great introductory fragrance for oud because it's very, very far off in the background. This smells like a fruity shampoo. You've got peach and melon, you've got some citrusiness that gives a little bit of tanginess, and then in the base you have a lot of musk. And this is going to be very reminiscent of the scent Herba Pura by Xerjoff. And if you are not new on this channel, you guys will know that I do not care for that fragrance. The reason being is because the musk in that is very cold and metallic and very sharp, but I am happy to report that I find the musk in this to be significantly more tolerable. Even though this is much more affordable, this, in my opinion, is a better version than Herba Pura. So if you like something fruity, shampoo, clean, musky, and you want that oud just very, very lightly in the background, this one is a good place to start. That is Oud Amar. So we're still in our introductory category, but this one is going to move into a slight bit more of a masculine scent if you're into that sort of thing. So this is called Black Anubis by Sphinx. It's a little bit spicy and a little tiny bit leathery on the opening with saffron. Then you have some nutmeg that's very warming. The amber comes off a little bit honeyed and sweet and very cozy. And you get this super alluring powdery tonka bean. This is sweet, it's comforting, and the oud in this comes across just a little bit leathery and a little bit animalic, but not in a dirty way. This is an intoxicating fragrance. And although I find it to lean a little bit masculine, I think a lot of women would be obsessed with this fragrance because of that little bit of sweetness in there. It just feels so cozy and a little bit sexy. I think it's the tonka bean in here because I swear to God, there is a tonka bean effect. Can we talk about that for a second? Whenever a fragrance has tonka bean, that is just a horny fragrance. Can we all agree? And the last one that I have in my beginner oud category is going to be this baby right here. This is called Of the Immortals. This was made in collaboration with a perfume reviewer named Curly Scents. And if you guys have not watched her videos, I don't know what you're doing. She is actually one of the people that I watched in the very beginning before I even had a channel. And so she is partly to blame for all of this madness. She is hilarious and she has impeccable taste. And when I saw that she came out with a fragrance, I looked at those fragrance notes. It is as if she plucked every single fragrance note that I have ever enjoyed in my life and smushed them all into one fragrance. So just a quick backstory because I find this interesting. This scent is based on the scent of ambrosia, the food and drink of gods, specifically Greek gods, because Curly Scents is Greek. This to me smells like a coconut cream tiramisu, and then it goes into a dark, sultry, nighttime, slightly masculine version. So it starts off a little bit more sweet, gourmand, and feminine, but then it takes a very dark turn, making this an androgynous scent. It has booze, it has coffee, it has fig, which is one of my favorite notes of all time because it can add this sweet, milky characteristic along with coconut. But then the way that the oud works in this is it comes off a little bit dark and charred and smoky in the base. So like I said, this does a beautiful magic act on the skin. So if you want something that has a ton of character, but is still a beginner-friendly oud fragrance, this one right here, Of the Immortals, is stunning. Next, we're going to be diving into our more intermediate category. Now, I know some of you are going to look at the fragrances that I deem as more master level oud fragrances and will probably say, girl, that is absolutely nothing. I understand, because unfortunately, the really, really, really impactful ouds literally smell like cow shit to me. So my high-end ouds are pretty tame in comparison. If you are a beginner or you struggle with oud, you are in the right place. You're in good company. The first two in this category I am actually going to talk about together because I find these to be pretty interchangeable. They are very, very similar. So this is Shoggoth Oud by Swiss Arabian, and this is Oud Saffron from Orientica. So these are both very, very rich, sticky, sweet fragrances, but I'm not talking about a fruity candy, but rather a praline, a jammy, thick rose with a lot of saffron, and then an oud that comes off very, very dark, rich, woody. Oud Saffron out of the two is my favorite. When I compare the two, this one has a slightly metallic scent. You know when you hold pennies in your hand and then you drop them and you smell your hand and it almost smells like copper or rust? It doesn't stick around for a long time and you don't smell it in the air, but between the two, I just find that this one is a little bit softer blended and this one can be a little bit harsh. They're very similar. If you like something that is loud, something that will last and project, you would like these. They're very, very sweet. There's a lot of vanilla and a lot of rich, rich woodiness. Proceed with caution with these. Next, we have another one from the Kayali collection, and this one out of the entire collection is my absolute die-hard favorite, and this is Cafe Oud. I missed out on the opportunity to buy this with a discount during the Sephora sale, and I am shooting myself in the foot because I only have half of this left, this little tiny bottle, and I will milk this to the very bitter end because I love this fragrance. Similar to rose oud, this is going to be a rose and geranium fragrance, but what makes this different is that this has the note of cappuccino. I find it interesting that it's the note of cappuccino. Instead of coming off like a milky coffee, this comes off like a dark chocolate. Very natural smelling. You know those high quality chocolate bars? That's kind of what it reminds me of, with a strong, dark, vintage, powdery rose. And the oud in the base comes off a little bit dirty and a little bit earthy, and that is emphasized by a little bit of patchouli. But then you have that signature vanilla in the base, giving a little bit of creaminess. This smells like a vampire. It's dark and alluring. This is like a temptress fragrance. So that's why I put it in the intermediate category. It is quite a bold fragrance, and I could see people saying that this is a little bit vintage. I could see that because of those slightly powdery elements, but this is so intoxicating. And sometimes when I want a little extra hit of coffee, I want that coffee to be stronger, I will pair this with Acro Awake, and that is an acidic black coffee fragrance. And when you mix these two, that is alchemy like you wouldn't believe. And I have some really good layering combinations, so if you guys are interested in that, please comment down below. Next, we have Tobacco Oud by Guerlain, and this is going to be a sticky sweet tobacco fragrance. So we have notes of honey, and it is a very photorealistic honey. Almost think of honey on the comb, like a manuka honey. Very natural, very, very sweet. It does not smell synthetic whatsoever. And the tobacco in this comes off dried and earthy, so it almost has that dried leafy scent that kind of reminds me of autumn. You also have sesame and clove, and the combination of those two give a roasted sesame sort of feel. And the oud in this is also a little bit dirty and earthy, kind of adding to that tobacco scent, but it is smoothed out with a sandalwood that comes off a little milky. The spices in this is slightly reminiscent of Tobacco Vanille by Tom Ford. Imagine Tobacco Vanille, but instead of having a really strong cinnamon sort of warmth to it, instead you are going to have a honeyed, syrupy dripping experience. This is nicely balanced between earthy and sweet, a little bit spicy, and a little bit woody. Next is actually my scent of the day, and this is by the brand Shobad, and this is called Mysterious Oud. This fragrance smells like a warm hug, but it's interesting because it does a little bit of a 180. So in the beginning, you get a lot of a creamy musk. So it smells very smooth and almost a little bit clean, slightly reminiscent of like a clean skin musk meets laundry detergent sort of thing, but I don't want you to think actual laundry detergent because that's a little bit too bath time. Think clean skin, but then as it dries down, it gets a little bit spicy. This is an ultimately comforting fragrance. So you have notes of amber and musk, a sandalwood that comes off creamy. It has a beautiful sweetness, and the oud in this is very delicate. Now this could almost go in a beginner friendly category. You get a lot of that in the beginning, and then as this dries down, it does go a little bit earthy and a little bit spicy and has quite a bold scent profile, but I feel that it's very sheer in comparison to a lot of ouds that I've experienced. Fabulous. This is newer to my collection, and this was an instant love. Next is from one of my favorite houses of all time. You guys have heard me rave about them before if you've been here. This is Supernova by Andrea Mack. Now this is such an elegantly blended fragrance. This smells regal. This smells expensive. So in the beginning, this is warm and spicy with notes of cinnamon and cardamom. Then you get a little bit of a leatheriness from some saffron. Only this house can pull off a lavender fragrance that I actually enjoy. Lavender tests me because often it comes off very medicinal and very herbal and a little bit sharp, but in this it softens so nicely with those warm spicy notes, so that way it doesn't go too sharp and it just smells elegant. It smells regal, like I could see royalty wearing this. It has the note of vetiver, which to my nose can come off a little bit like dry hay and a little bit like leather, and it also has the note of leather in the base. I've said now several times that it has leather nuances. I don't want you guys to think like a new car, acrylic-y, loud, nasty leather. I want you to think of a really rich, supple handbag, and then has a little bit of a calming lavender. This is a beautiful, stunning fragrance. And I think to most people, they would not be able to pick out those elements because of how well blended this fragrance is. I can't stress it enough. This is a stunner. Next is a fragrance that I never thought I would have enjoyed. This is Sin and Pleasure, and this is a patchouli dominant fragrance, and that is another note that I have struggled with over the years. But the patchouli is done in a way that gives a balmy, earthy characteristic that is really well balanced with some sweeter notes. So we have caramel, we also have almond that adds a little bit of nuttiness and also a little bit of powderiness. And the oud in this works with the note of leather to give a little bit of this dark, warm, cozy, earthy sort of vibe. So this is a bold fragrance that is nicely balanced with some sweet powdery notes. I find this to be a little bit more on the masculine side, but once again, I think a lot of women would enjoy this because of that little bit of caramel in there that gives just a little bit of sweet nuance. And the last in our intermediate collection is a brand new one to my collection, but an instant love for me. This is by the brand Rania J, and this is called Oud Te Habanero. So this starts off very spicy. So you have cardamom and black pepper, and that black pepper comes off like a freshly ground, coarse black pepper. And then it has the note of tobacco. And the tobacco and the oud in this really work together to smell like hay that's been dried directly in the sunshine. So it's very earthy, very, very earthy, but more on the green vegetal side and less on the animalic dirty side. There's a little bit of smokiness in the base coming from some incense and a resinous quality from some myrrh. So this is spicy, it's woody, earthy, and a little bit smoky. And to me, this is a fabulous oud tobacco fragrance. Just kidding, I have one more that I think would be more in the intermediate category. So this is the last one of the Kayali collection, and this is Tobacco Oud. This is also a dry, earthy sort of scent, but this is significantly sweeter than the last one I talked about because it has the note of honey, and this has some cloves, but I also get a strong dose of citrus in the beginning. It's aromatic, it's a little bit sweet, it's earthy, and the oud in this is a little bit animalic. We're slightly going into that dry barnyard sort of scent, just a little bit, but this is dipping our toes in that water. So that is Tobacco Oud by Kayali. First up in our heavy hitters category is going to be another new one from the House of Swiss Arabian, and this is called Oud Oz Rock. A lot of people in the reviews say that this is super animalic, super poopy, super barnyard. I don't agree with that. I think that this one is very deep and woody and rich, but I don't smell it going super fecal. In fact, to me, this smells like a more masculine version of one of my favorite fragrances from Kayali. It smells like the masculine version of this. This is ambery. It has some sweetness and it has a little bit of spiciness to it. So if you wore these two together, it is a match made in heaven. Don't be afraid of the reviews on this one. Although it is dark and rich and woody, it's nicely balanced with some spicy notes and some sweetness, and I do think that this leans a little bit more on the masculine side. So if you enjoyed Invite Only by Kayali, but you want something a little bit more masculine, I would definitely try Oud Oz Rock. Next is Amethyst from the House of Lattafa. Now earlier I talked about some rose oud fragrances, but oftentimes they come with a heavy dose of thick sweetness, usually some sort of praline note, but this is more of a natural smelling rose with a little bit of spiciness. So it has black and pink pepper in the beginning, then a rich, robust rose. That's great alliteration. And then in the base, you get a really strong oud along with an amber and a vanilla that kind of chill it out. This is a very powerful fragrance. When I was in Panama, I was at a mall, and surprisingly at this random mall in Panama, they sold a lot of Arab fragrances at kiosks. And me and my friend were so far away from this kiosk, and I knew that they sprayed this. I just knew it. And I was like, that is amethyst. My friend's like, what are you talking about? And I was like, mark my words, you're gonna see a dark purple bottle with gold writing on it. I'm telling you, we were on the other side of the mall, and when we walked over there, I was like, right there, that's the bottle. She's like, you are a bloodhound, Olivia. Next is actually from a dupe house, and this is a dupe of Ombre Nomad by Louis Vuitton, but this is from the house of Alexandria Fragrances, and this is No Shade for Nomad. This is a dark fragrance. It comes off a little bit spicy and is very, very masculine. This, in my opinion, is a dupe done right. The performance is there. The scent is super accurate. I even made a decant for my brother, and my dent is so minimal. I will not be able to spray this before it goes bad because it simply only needs a couple sprays. If you like something that's rich and dark and powerful and masculine, this is going to be for you. That is No Shade for Nomad by Alexandria Fragrance. Let me introduce you to Oud for Greatness by Initio. This is a powerful, sexy masculine fragrance. This smells so regal and so expensive that even my husband thought that this smelled like the most expensive fragrance that ever existed, and he is so not into oud fragrances. This has some of those leathery nuances, but it is significantly more spice, holding a place in my heart forever and ever and ever. And yes, it is super pricey, but it is worth it. And lastly, I'm going to end off on a fragrance that unfortunately did not work out for me. And the reason that it didn't work out for me is because it has a very thick oud. Now, I said in the beginning, oud and me did not always get along, and this is one of those fragrances that I feared, and I still do. So this is called Tiara by the brand Pear Noir. And when I read the notes, I thought I was going to be crazy about this fragrance. It has red berries, it has rum, it has spices, vanilla. I thought that this was going to be the fragrance of my dreams. But the berries in this come off syrupy sweet. And then when you add that note of rum, it comes off medicinal, almost like cough syrup. You add in the most intense oud that truly does go fecal. This smells like shit and like cough syrup. Now, I want to be fair. All of the offerings from this fragrance house, this is the only one I didn't like, and I'm the one that picked it for myself. Let me make it clear that it is not a reflect of the brand as a whole. I like all of their other fragrances, but this one, I made a deep judgment error because I don't like this one at all. But if you like a very poopy oud and you like some sugary, sweet, boozy berries, I think that you would love this. So that is all that I have for you guys today. Like I said, I'm a little bit of a newbie when it comes to oud. I have really started getting into it over the last year. So if there are some oud-centric fragrances in your collection that you absolutely adore and you think that I need to get my nose on, please tell me in the comments down below. I am always on the hunt, and I personally have been getting really into them lately because the lasting power is just phenomenal. When you find one that works for you, it makes you smell very regal and expensive and elegant. So if you're afraid of ouds, don't be. Just try some from the beginning of the video and graduate to the latter half of the video. You get what I'm saying? That's all for now, folks. So I'll see you next Saturday, 10 a.m. PST. And until then, take care of yourselves, my friends.